Hi there. We're the Gaineses, Eamonn
Leah.
and we've been asked to talk a little bit just about our experience and how we met and our marriage and how that all fits together.
Yep.
We've been married 12 years. Some days it feels like 3 weeks, and other days it feels like we've always been married.
Yeah.
Um, so I suppose where did we meet?
We met in St Paul's Parish in Belfast after Latin Mass. I was hanging around waiting for my housemate to come out and got talking to this lovely lady. We're just having a lovely conversation. And yeah, she's now my mother-in-law, and we still have lots of lovely conversations, so that's kind of good.
Yeah, it does sound a bit odd, but yeah, I was introduced to my wife by my mother.
After Mass.
After Mass. But it was a good way to start. It was definitely a good way to start.
I always like saying our eyes met over a smoking thurible, but he keeps reminding me that it was a low Mass, so there wouldn't have been any incense.
No,
But let the truth get in the way of a good story, you know?
no, but there was that moment as I was there, working my way along the altar rail and assisting the priest distributing Holy Communion, and I noticed this tall, elegant, impressive lady, blonde hair, really very noticeable, and then there was the rather more petite and not so immediately striking girl next to her.
And it wasn't quite as grey then, mind you, but
Well, it all worked out nicely in the end.
yeah.
The lovely blonde lady is godmother to our eldest, but I married this lady. So, I guess, well, what else?
How long before we got engaged?
We worked it out once. We worked it out once between us. We were going out 3 months, 5 days when we got engaged. But having said that, when we started going out, yeah, we kind of had a conversation pretty early on.
I think it must have been, it was easily within the first couple of weeks anyway that we
Yeah,
talked about would this have the potential to go somewhere, because neither of us were particularly interested in just dating for dating's sake. I
yeah.
mean, it wasn't a, okay, are we getting engaged really, really quickly here? But it was more of a, can this lead to something? Maybe, if we discern that it should. So,
But that was it. Once
yeah.
once we'd had that conversation, it meant it was something we could think about, we could talk about,
Yeah.
that it was there, rather than avoiding it or pretending it wasn't, or pretending that it wasn't somewhere that we would, something that we would need to talk about. So we ended up getting engaged then, and
We avoided the, what we've dubbed discernitis.
yeah,
Sitting around waiting to, and just endlessly discerning whether or not this is what we're meant to do. We just got on with it and let God keep the door open or close the door and lead us somewhere else if it wasn't meant to be. So
that was the
yeah.
thing that we've seen with friends, with other couples, with other individuals, the ones who've maybe tried religious life and found it wasn't for them, but they tried it, they lived the life, it didn't work, and God led them somewhere else. Or the couples that got engaged, followed on for a bit, and then realised, actually, no, this isn't working, this isn't good, this isn't something that we can thrive at. And so, they've had to find a different path. Others then who go in, try it, put down roots, grow in it, and it becomes their life. And that's how it was for us.
Yeah. So we have 5 daughters.
We have 5 daughters. We had the first
Probably
one
better
within
mention that bit, you know.
we had the first one within a year
Yeah.
of being married. We sort of said, Lord, we need a bit of time to get used to each other.
Can you give us a year? He gave us a month.
He gave us a month. So we were blessed with a child very early on. Like a lot of blessings God gives, not easy.
No.
Worth it, beautiful, wonderful, but not easy. But very much what was needed.
Yeah. It kept us talking and, well, communicating. You have to learn to communicate very well when, you're tired and lack of sleep and getting up in the night with a small baby and having to offload small baby onto daddy to walk up and down and up and down and up and down to enable you to get a breather. And yeah,
all of that. And there needs to be that there needs to be that communication. You need to be able to say what you need and say what's on your mind. You also need to learn to say it in a way that the other person can hear. You need to be honest without being harsh. You need to take account of their feelings just as you know, I need to take account of hers as she does of mine. So there needs to be a lot of communication, a lot of talking.
See, we discovered quite early as well that a lot of people, when babies arrive, everybody's looking after mummy and looking after baby and want to know how you're feeling and everything. Nobody looks at daddies and say, how are you feeling? And they're as equally overwhelmed and tired. And so I found that as a wife, it was my job to look after daddy too. Just, you know,
And
I might have been exhausted, but I would at least sort of ask, how are you feeling? You know?
the you see the payback from that, the where that sort of what it feeds into is that it's so much easier to take trouble, take time, make the effort for your wife.
And to change the dirty nappies.
Well, I have a stronger stomach. But to do that because she's the one who remembers that when everybody else is focused on mummy and baby, and that's a perfectly natural focus, the only person interested in daddy was mummy. But that just reinforces where my focus and my attention is, because when you get that in return, what it does is reinforces what you're already giving. You know, give and then you receive and then you give as a result. So it ends up creating a sort of a perfect circle. But talking as well.
Yeah, communication has definitely been a big thing. I know everybody used to joke, I can talk for Ireland and so can he, and we're a great match and all that, but it, it has been very, very important that it's what was it you were saying about this? It's quantity. You know, if you talk about everything, sooner or later you will talk about everything.
Yeah.
And it is definitely, you can always tell when one of us isn't in good form because we stop talking, and it is very important to keep that up throughout your marriage, because yeah.
Well, the other side of it then, you can talk to each other and that takes you a certain way. But what's got to underpin it and be there at every stage is that you're always talking to him.
Yeah.
Something that it's sort of it's just a little almost motto we repeat to each other, particularly when times are hard. You know, when we had the prospect of nowhere to live, and there were all sorts of difficulties, and we couldn't see a way out, and we were sort of at the end of our tether, and we had to remind ourselves, we are where we always have been.
Yeah.
We're in the palm of his hand. God gives the increase. He decides where we're to go. He shows us where he wants us to be, what it is he wants us to do. We decide to do what to do with what he's given us, but it's always in his hands, and it's always his gift.
Yeah.
I
think the big indicator of that for us was when our youngest was born at 26 weeks. Very, very early, very small. She was only a pound and a half, and she was very, very sick for the first little while. And yeah, just I'll let you.
Well, we had a. I was about to leave the hospital. Leah was recovering, and I was about to leave the hospital and go home. I'll come back in tomorrow, and sort of getting towards evening time, and a nurse said, "No, don't leave yet. Doctor wants a word with both of you." I was like, "Oh, can't it wait till tomorrow?" No, I really wouldn't leave yet if I were you. And the doctor came in and introduced himself, and there was a bevy of junior doctors and other people and everybody behind him, and he laid it out very, very simply exactly how sick she was, and essentially he didn't expect her to live. She might, but it was unlikely. And then he said, if there's anything that's important to you, blessings or baptism or christenings, he said, I don't know what your beliefs are, but anything like that that's important to you, I do it now for there might be another chance. Well, we called a friend. He was a priest in the next parish over. He was actually on his day off. He was 20 miles away. He was putting his feet up from a very busy parish schedule. But typical priest, no, I'll be there. You just sit tight. I'm coming now. He was there sort of half an hour later. He came in. He was visibly shocked at how ill she was and how many machines she was hooked up to and all the rest. And he baptized her. It was very simple, very spare ceremony, but that was done. And we essentially sat there and waited for things to get worse.
Yeah, and they didn't.
And they didn't.
Yeah.
And she settled. And all her measurements stabilized. And we suddenly realized, well, two things had happened. One is sacrament, grace. Don't get me wrong, the doctors were vital, the nurses were vital, all the technology, all that stuff is brilliant. But it was on a knife edge with everything the hospital could bring to bear. Best care you can get anywhere.
Yeah.
But it was touch and go. And the grace of the sacrament made a visible, noticeable difference. She just turned a corner.
And the other thing was we had asked sent a message out, asked a few friends. We're both third order Dominicans. So we sent a few messages out to those who were in our Dominican chapter and asked them to pray. And I think it wasn't even 24 hours before it was round the world, and it was so many people praying for her that we didn't even know. And I think that just the fact that between the power of the sacraments but also the power of prayer really carried her through.
Mm-hmm.
And she's 4 now and a wee torture.
Yeah,
well,
she's
sometimes
she's a bit slower to develop in some ways than others, and we worried at one point that she wouldn't be verbal because she was non-verbal. She wasn't speaking a little to us in the family, not to anyone outside.
No, we can't find the off switch.
We can't find the off switch.
So she's definitely against.
She chatters. She chatters constantly and endlessly.
Sorry. Yeah. So basically, our main thing is we need to keep talking to each other, but more importantly, we need to keep talking to him. And we are where we've always been.
In the palm of his hand.
There we go.